Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. This is the Backdrop CMS outreach meeting. Start with, I'm Martin. I'm in the United Kingdom, Yorkshire Pudding around Backdrop, and I look after the LinkedIn page for Backdrop. And if we go to Sarvashri.
Okay, my name is Sarvashri. I'm in Walnut Cove, North Carolina, and I'm interested in getting new people, especially beginners, started with Backdrop. I think it'll be useful for them. Let's see, Jen.
I'm Jen Lampton, joining from Oakland, California. And back to Tim.
Okay, I am the live stream is acting a little weird. I hope we're recording. It says that something's recording, but it's not showing me like it usually does. Anyways, my name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota. And yeah, just recovering from Backdrop Live and getting ready for getting back focused on all my other projects that got delayed. So I think our agenda for today as Backdrop meeting would be one, to talk briefly at least about sort of next steps in Backdrop Live. That this is one of our biggest outreach tools. And the other thing, Jen, if you have just a couple of minutes, I'd like to talk about the open source day, just to make sure, update folks on what's happening with that, and maybe make clear who's doing what, which I think is mostly, why don't we just talk about that right now and get it out of the way? Which I think it's mostly, I want to clarify that you've got that under control and I should just ignore it.
Yeah, I'm doing all of the communication with the organizers. I did add you as a sprint lead, so that when we actually start, you can participate in that. But you don't have to worry about any of the communication ahead of time. I've filled out all the forms and I've emailed the people, and I'm just making sure we're on track for everything that they need from us, essentially.
Okay. So for those who are unaware, Open Source Day is an annual, well, it's actually been more than annual. They've added some extras, but they have an annual conference for women in tech. It's a Grace Hopper. Can you say the full name of where this comes from? She's Googling.
I think it's just called the Grace Hopper Celebration.
Right.
So Grace Hopper was a woman computer scientist, and so this whole event was sort of around trying to get more women active in computer science, and in particular, they're trying to get women involved in open source, so they have Open Source Day. We find that there are plenty of attendees there who aren't women, which is also nice, but it is also refreshing to see a bunch of female faces when we do gather, so that's
Sure.
Sort of a personal passion of mine, I guess.
And it, from my understanding, is that I think this year, I don't know if it's a hybrid event, back where they're doing some live and some online. Yeah. But I think in the past, when they did live event, even live events had thousands of participants. I mean, it's a pretty big event, and if not tens of thousands, I mean, it was a pretty big live event. And more recently, it's been online, and we've been. This would be our third Grace Hopper, official Grace Hopper celebration Open Source Day. They also have had at least one other Open Source Day that was not connected directly to their annual conference. And so this would be our fourth, I think, actual Open Source Day with them. And they, I've been involved in all three with Jen, and I think that they've went pretty well. They've been fun to do. It's always an enthusiastic group of developers that are interested in learning how to get involved in open source. And we've had some great experiences with them. And we've even opened some tickets, usability or UI, user interface tickets, based on working with them and, and watching them interact with Backdrop. We've noticed some problems that one of which I think just got fixed fairly recently. So if anybody has questions about that, they should contact Jen. Jen, you just it'd be nice to get an update once in a while in terms of, I think the event is like at the beginning of, is it September or October?
Yeah, I dropped a link in both
Okay.
Zoom and Zulip.
September 16th, 2022,
There we
from
go.
8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific time.
Oh, September 15th, that's, or 16th?
16th.
That's
16th
day
is the day
after
after the release.
the release. This, I seem to recall this being close to release in the past as well. So Jen, one of the things, we don't have to talk too much about this, and again, I know you're busy with some other things, but one, I think we should talk a little bit about just like new, good first-time issues in the issue queue. I don't know if you noticed recently, but there was an issue that I had opened as a good first issue that was just like about adding a button or something pretty small. And then somebody else closed the ticket because they're like, we haven't agreed to do this yet. And in my view, it was like, I know we haven't agreed to do it, but I thought it would be a good issue to create a pull request. And once there's a pull request, then the discussion, that's usually when we have the discussion about whether or not to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we don't have, we've closed a lot of good first-time issues. I don't know if we've been opening them as fast as we've been closing them. So one, I think we should be sort of clear on what the intent is of good first-time issues or good first issues are, so that we're not having some people opening them and other people closing them again. And also we might want to find some time to make sure that we have a good selection of good first issues, especially prior to Grace Hopper Day. Although I think last year we tried to focus on that usability stuff, and that might be another good thing to do this year. I don't know.
Yeah, they did have an accessibility focus.
That's what I mean.
And we did generate a handful of accessibility issues ahead of time. We got the Center for Accessible Technology to do a quick review of stuff. And I think there's still some of those issues that haven't been resolved. So it would be nice if we could get those wrapped up, but there are a handful of others. I agree. We should spend some time.
Zeller shared a good list of the accessibility issues that we've got at the moment that need, so it might be, again, look at that and identify a few that are potentially good ones to work on.
That's great. Yeah, I think we've got some time to do some cleanup on that issue queue. But Tim, in general, if you see someone close an issue that like there's no consensus on one way or another, you can just reopen it and be like, we're just gonna leave this for later. In general, there's no problem to having too many issues, and it's more important that people not like find that same issue or recreate the same issue multiple times, or find it in the future and be like, why I was working on this, why did my issue get closed, and feel like they
actually, to be clear, it wasn't that they closed it. They just removed the good first issue tag because the idea was like, why are we having somebody create a pull request if we haven't decided we want to do this yet? And in my view, there's a lot of these little things that we'll never talk about until someone does a PR. And if it's an easy PR to do, why not have a beginner do it? And then we'll have the discussion, and that doesn't mean we're committed to implementing it. And so if we're in agreement on that, I think we should talk about it. I might go so far as to suggest that we have certain people who are responsible in sort of culling the first issues, and just ask other people to leave them alone. Because if I have a really specific reason, you and I are the ones who are usually doing these events, and we might have very specific reasons why we tag it. And if other people, disagree, they should go ahead and post a comment, I think, and just say, hey, maybe this shouldn't be a first-time issue because, and I would rather that than they just remove the tag.
Yeah.
So we could bring that up in a dev meeting and just sort of establish that as the preferred process. Is to, if you think something shouldn't be a first-time issue, just make a note. Make a note rather than actually removing the tag. I think this is definitely an outreach topic because, I think that for me, outreach can be for developers as well as for, usually we're talking about how to get people using background. and get new people into the community. And one way is through these sort of beginner events. And we've done the two big ones that we've done is this open source day. We also did open force. I think for the last couple of years, I always at the last minute realize that there's this Hacktoberfest that happens every year, which is another thing that we could participate in. And for anybody who's not aware of it, I think some big company helps sponsor it. I forget which one. I think it's like a hosting company. And they give out T-shirts during the month of October to people who commit to open source projects. And different open source projects can register and sort of schedule events during the month of October to help people, to basically provide an opportunity for people to get their Hacktoberfest T-shirt. I don't know if Hacktoberfest is still happening this year, but I always think about it too late, and it might be something we want to look at and sort of officially participate in, and even schedule a Hacktoberfest event where people could come and contribute. And then this Hacktoberfest organization will help promote it. So if anybody knows of other events that would be good for sort of hackathons or opportunities to get first-time contributors, let us know. Okay, so do we need, we don't probably need any other participants in that right now? You don't need any other mentors or anything, do you think? Or you think we're in good shape in terms of?
I think we're okay. I think if we had other people who were available on the 16th to help, that would be good. But they do also assign mentors to our project for the day. And we even have the opportunity to request some of the people who are our mentors in the past. I know we had a couple of people who mentored Open Source Day and then came back later and continued contributing even long after the event was over, and they got some of their stuff in core and they were very appreciative. And so I'm going to specifically request that we get those people again. I don't know if they're going to be attending and if they're even offering to be mentors, but it would be nice if they were. But yeah, if anyone else wants to be able on the 16th just to help new people figure out our workflow, that's really the most important thing.
It was, we do have to create a video, or they're asking us this year, I think I noticed, to create a video about our project. So if that's something you need help with, let us know. Maybe that's, because it might be something we could make for more general use.
Yeah.
That might have broader use than just Open Day, or Open Source Day, but would also work for their needs.
Okay.
I'll just point out that it was one of our Open Source Day mentors that invited us to participate in Open Force, which was, I think, a pretty successful event. We had about 10 or 15 people submit pull requests during Open Force, and hopefully we'll get more opportunities like that.
That's great.
Okay. Enough on open, or then the new mentoring. I suppose the next thing we could talk about briefly is Backdrop Live. And we have a small group here today. But first of all, does anybody just have any general comments about how Backdrop Live went, or what the next step should be?
I think for me it felt like there were more people at more sessions. It felt like there was more consistent attendance throughout, and I think there were some really good discussions, and I think people who were sort of attending lots really enjoyed it. So I think it was sort of one of the, even though sort of the agenda was a bit more sparse, I think there was a good attendance, and I think we picked some good topics that people were interested in.
So sure. How about you, Sarvashri? What was your overall?
Well, what I noticed was the people who are coming are all developers and experienced people. So I had a session for beginners, but there were no beginners. So there was one beginner that was sort of beginning to backdrop in a way, but experienced in other programming of various sorts. So if we want to reach out to new people to get them interested in backdrop, I don't know if it's the best forum for them. Most people who are coming are more technically oriented and they're not beginners, but there should be some event for beginners to learn more about backdrop. And so I was just doing a search for CMS reviews online to see what other software is being presented in the marketplace. And I think that, to talk to send something to some of those reviewers to look at backdrop might be a good way to get people who are looking for a CMS to find us if we're included in some of those reviews. So that's the idea that I had. Who is reviewing CMSs and are we included?
Good. I've seen one or two sort of articles recently that like listed the top 15 CMSs or something, and where backdrop was on the list, maybe at the bottom, maybe near the bottom of the list, but at least on the list, which I feel like is different than I was seeing a couple of years ago, but where we weren't getting mentioned at all. But I think that's a good thing. There might be a little more awareness of us out there. Sarvashri, I think my normal response to something like this is I think these are great ideas, and to the extent that you can help put together a list of like where people we should be contacting or communicating with, that it's not like we need to know that we should do it. It's just that we need somebody to do it.
Right, so
somebody's just got to create the list. Yep.
Yeah, maybe I can make a go-to list.
Yeah, just that we could try communicating more. I mean, so it used to be that, and I don't know, maybe people still do this and we're just not. I know there was some talk about it early in the backdrop days because I've seen the tickets, but organizations used to put out press releases and they used to have a list of organizations that they would send their press releases to. And I think, again, there was some talk about that at some stage. We don't really do that, right? I think social media has changed that a lot, where now people tend to just put things out on social media. But it might be that there should be a list of reviewers and organizations. There are a few websites that sort of cover CMSs that do sometimes post stuff about us. And we could do a better job at, making sure they know about us or know about what, new releases, events, things like that. So I think the main thing we need is somebody to just work on that list and then remind us that it's there and make sure we use it. I would for sure use it if I had it.
Okay. Is there a list started?
I don't. There might have been. What I would do is go to the backdrop.org issue queue, and you and I, if you ping me, I can give you a link to it later, or and search for like press release or press list or something. And see if there's an issue that was started in the past that has a list. I don't know of one for sure, but I feel like probably at some point somebody started to brainstorm that and then it just never went anywhere.
Okay, so we have a list of websites that we want. We have a list of social media locations like Facebook locations and whatnot.
So
just making a list of the
right. We regularly hit Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and I think we might even have some of them are on our release checklist, but I don't know that we have like an official list somewhere of all the organizations like for a press release. And if we did, it should include social media organizations that we want to hit. Again, right now, primarily it's been those three, but it could be that we should be including other social media platforms. We just need help with that. I am going to share the link to the, there's, for, if you, we've gotten much less good at this. We used to use the backdrop.org issue queue for these kinds of community discussions. And then at some point, some members of the community advocated for a special GitHub issue queue called Backdrop Community. And that is really the place where today, if I were to open an issue about outreach, I would do it in the Backdrop Community issue queue. The problem is that in the past, a lot of these issues are in the old place. And I'm trying to get to it right now, and GitHub is, oh, okay, there we go. So here, give me 1 second. Sarvashri, do you have an account with GitHub? Have you ever posted to our GitHub issue queues?
You're on mute there, Sarvashri.
I do have an account on GitHub because I've gone there, but I don't know how to use it very well. I did post some things there one time.
Well, so I just
video
posted
production and whatnot.
I just posted a link in Zulip to the community, to the Backdrop Community issue queue, and you can really just treat that as a forum. So there's nothing complicated. If you have an account, you should be able to just log in and post comments like you would in most forums. So don't think about it as a complicated tool. It does do a lot of complicated things, but you don't need to worry about those. But the other place to look, and this is what I was getting at before, is that historically some of these things are in a different issue queue called the Backdrop backdropcms.org issue queue. And I'm going to give that link right now. And if you're looking for, actually, to tell you what, let me share my screen. So this is the backdropcms.org, and I'm just going to look for like press list and do a search, because this is where this might have been talked about in the past. And if so, we should move it to the new. So there's adding a press book page. I don't know what this meant. Okay, I'm not going to worry about this one. There's another old or current issue, get backdrop into the news on other non-backdrop related site. Look here, we have, so this is the beginning of a list. This has some podcasts, it has some news blogs. I'll put this issue in Zulip. Okay, I just posted a link to that specific issue. I'm also going to see if I think we can move this issue to, okay, I'm not going to try to do that right now because I don't, maybe we, well, I'm pretty sure we can. And we really would like to move this into the community issue queue. And that's where we have these discussions. But what I would do, Sarvashri, is you should be able to edit this post. So you can, we could create a new document and we could take this stuff, or we could just edit this and you can add. So this isn't like, this is how it's different from a regular form, in that we do use this markup language to edit things. So if you're not familiar, or Markdown it's called, if you're not familiar with Markdown, just try to look at previous, like if you're going to add an item, you just kind of do this, you add a dash, and then you got to kind of follow the format to create a link.
Yeah, you can use the buttons at the top to add things, and it'll do the formatting for you.
Right, that's true. If you just do something like Twitter, and then if you do a link there, look at that, it sort of creates it for you, and now you just add that. But it's a little bit trickier than it would be if you were posting in the backdrop forum.
Yeah.
But
If you're not sure if something will work, just switch to preview.
yes, and you can see what it looks like, and then you can edit and switch back and forth. But what we could do is just continue to build this out, and then what you could do, Sarvashri, is remind us whenever we're promoting something that we have this list, because I totally forget about this, and it's been so long. But there are some podcasts, and what this doesn't do is provide us. We should have a list that has emails. So I would prefer that we actually created like a Google Doc that had, or a sheet that had the publications and the contact addresses that we could just dump in and send an email to from time to time and let them know what we're doing, and to make sure that these are up. Some of these, like Medium, I mean, that's not something we can just send a press release to, right? We actually would have to write a column and submit it there. And so that would be something, is to organize these to organizations that we can just send emails to let them know what we're doing, and then other organizations where we have to submit something in a formal way. And I don't know, to submit a Medium article means we need a volunteer willing to write that article. So
we want to create a press release email list.
Sure. Yep.
And then we want to create a post list where we can do postings. And
yeah, I mean, it could be one list that just sort of categorizes them.
It'd be a different list within a list.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So a posting list, press release, email list, and an article
Sure.
composition list, article submission list.
There might be more discussions in this forum, in this issue queue, that are relevant. And so you could look around a little bit. I'm going to add a link. So that's a link to the whole. So those are the backdrop community and the backdrop cms.org. We should look in both of those, but we want to move these discussions into backdrop community. That's where they should end up.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay, let's go back. I'm going to quit sharing now, but this is, we haven't been using, Zulip has sort of taken over a lot of our organizational conversations, and that has its good and its bad side. The problem is, I think when people do open issues in these backdrop ops forums, is oftentimes they don't get as much attention as they do in Zulip. So then people quit using this. But the issue queue actually keeps a much better history, and is very, in a lot of ways, I think, a better organizational tool. It's just not as immediately gratifying as Zulip is. And I would encourage us to use this backdrop community forum more, and to try and get in the habit of having some of our planning and our outreach discussions there, because frankly, it keeps a better history than even our meeting notes do. So
you can always, if you find that no one's engaging with it, just post a note in Zulip to say, I've started a discussion over here, please share your thoughts. And there's a few people who regularly do that on things that they want, on technical issues where they want feedback, and they want people to test and say which way we should go, and they'll post it in Zulip, and generally people then go to the issue queue, have a look, and add their views there. So that's the way to do it if you're not getting any.
Sure. So enough of that, Sarvashri. That would be a really valuable thing that you could work on and help us out with.
Events is another one. Okay.
Sure. So I'd like to jump back to the other thing you said, Sarvashri, which is not a lot of, like, your focus has really been on absolute beginners. And I think for me, Backdrop Live is a great event, but it isn't a great event for absolute beginners.
Right.
I just had a meeting. I talked to Irina recently, and she sort of said she thought Backdrop Live went really well this time. And partly, she said, because she said to say hi to everyone, that she wouldn't be able to make today's meeting. But she specifically commented that one of the changes she's made is to think about Backdrop Live more as a unconference for Backdrop developers and less about an event for bringing new people into the community. Now, I think that to some extent, a lot of us have thought about that already, but not entirely. Like, I still want Backdrop Live to be both, but I think it's done a much better job at being for existing community members to sort of share information. And I don't think it's worked as well for bringing new people in. And I think we had an idea, like one idea I've had that we got close to this time is that we designate a particular block where we really try to have focused sessions that are for beginners, and that beginners could, rather than trying to, pop in, at various different blocks throughout a day and a half, that they have one particular block they focus on where they really know this is the beginner content. I mean, it isn't that we would have to restrict beginner content from other parts, but that we have one concentrated time. I think we're having a really hard time getting people to facilitate those discussions. And if we, I threw out, like, we should have a views for Backdrop session. Would anybody facilitate it? And I got some pushback, like, well, everybody knows how to use views. Why would we do that? And absolute beginners don't know how to use views. And if we want to get them to Backdrop Live, having a session about how to use views would be really valuable. But we forget that there are those beginners in our community that need that, and we don't program for that. We do have the intro to Backdrop session every time, but that's very high level, and it covers a lot of things. And I think it would be helpful if we had more beginner sessions. And I'm almost going so far as to say that maybe we just sort of take Irina's attitude and just treat Backdrop Live as more of a community meeting for people that are already in the community, and have a separate beginner event that's just 4 hours long, and it's just 4 hours of really only beginner topics. Like, we walk through views layouts, we talk about views, we talk about content types, and it's more like a training, a Backdrop training. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe we don't, what we do is just take our existing Backdrop training and try to schedule that like a 4-hour Backdrop training, and promote that as the place where absolute beginners come.
Yeah, introducing Backdrop, how to get started, that sort of thing would be great.
I know Jen has lots of thoughts on this, so I'm assuming that she's deep in thought on her other issue. Jen, if you want to jump in and say something, you can. Otherwise, we're not going to make any decisions today. So.
I was following the part where you were saying that Backdrop Live wasn't a great event for new people, but it was a great event for people who are already in Backdrop. And I think that that's true. I think my preference is more along the lines of yours, that we make it a more inviting place for people who are new to Backdrop. But I don't necessarily know how to do that without buy-in from everybody who's already there, that it should be for those people too. Just because we're not those people, it's hard to, when everyone has limited time, it's hard to try and do both. But yeah, I see both sides. I don't know how to.
What about this idea, which is that we take Block B, and not all of Block B, but we take one room in Block B and just do a 3-hour
intro track,
or just the training, just do our training session, right? So this is the begin. This, if you're an absolute beginner, this is a great place for you to jump in. And if it's the only thing you do, you're going to be really glad you did it. But if it inspires you, then there's a bunch of other things you can also participate in.
Yeah, I like that.
And it could fit in, because BW Panda was pointing out that actually the recorded sessions have had quite a lot of views. So if we were doing things for the beginner, and we did like some as you say, presentations on views, and recorded those, even if you just recorded like a presentation and then cut off a recording and then opened it up for Q&As, however you wanted to do it, but that could be quite I think that could work quite well.
Sure.
And
I like that idea.
showcasing the aspects of backdrop that are different from other CMSs and why it is a good choice. And
So-
views is one of them.
Right. Let me suggest this, which is, so another discussion that came up at the last Backdrop Live was if we're doing it too often. And I think I didn't get that sense from people participating that it's happening too often, but I think maybe that some of what people are referring to is the every 4 months, me in the forum bugging people to nominate, please submit sessions, please help promote, please. And that's happening too often. And that people feel like it's like we hardly get finished with one and all of a sudden Tim's back begging us to do more. And I'm feeling a little bit of fatigue in terms of doing that so frequently. On the other hand, I felt that more before Backdrop Live. I'm fired up now. And I'm not actually as worried about it today as I was the day before Backdrop Live. We talked about maybe going to twice a year, which I think would be a reasonable thing. But the problem with that is this would be a lousy time, I think, to make that decision, because 6 months from now would be like December. And then 6 months again would be the middle of summer, which is the worst time to do it. So, and I don't want to skip one and then go till spring. So I feel like maybe, and Jen pointed out, we do have a date on the calendar already for the next Backdrop Live. So I'm more inclined to stick with a regular schedule in October, and then maybe at that point decide that would be a good time to say, okay, let's do one in the fall and one in the spring. Or maybe we just decide to stick with what we've got. Does anybody else have feelings about whether or not 3 times is too much?
Yeah, I think 3 times is good, but I don't think we have to find new stuff every time. I think a lot of the things that are covered at Backdrop Live could be repeat events that happen at every Backdrop Live, and just an update on what's happening in that category, so that it's a standard thing that people would come to for updates, and we don't have to keep pushing for new ideas or more people to come in. But there's certain categories of things that are covered, and those categories could be standard presentations at every Backdrop Live with the latest updates in that particular area. In other words, we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Sure. The thing
Some
is,
things would be new, sure, but there could be many standard areas of presentation that happen every time. And that way we don't have to keep bugging people.
so I think there are opportunities to do that, but we have to think, but we would have to make some changes to Backdrop. Right now, Backdrop Live is supposed to be an unconference, which means that anybody can nominate a topic and put it on the schedule. And in theory, Sarvashri, what you're saying is true. It can happen. For example, you're the perfect example, right? Which is you've just nominated and facilitated the same discussion at every Backdrop Live, and you don't really have to do more work. You just put it on the schedule. And I think that's great. I think that works fine. But what we're having is a hard time getting other people to think that way. I think other people are really reluctant to put things on the schedule. And I think they don't feel comfortable doing the same thing over and over. And despite, I feel like I've, really tried to encourage people, just pick a topic you're interested in and schedule it. And Martin, you've obviously been good at that. And there's a handful of people who do it, but we've had other people that if I ask them, will you do a topic on multi-site, then they, oh, sure, I'll do that. But if I, just say, what do you want to talk about? They don't do anything. And I'm almost wondering if we shouldn't come up with a list of some of the topics we know we want, put them on the schedule, and then say, please, well, we need people to volunteer to just facilitate them. I'm not sure that would be any better though. But I'm just trying to think of ways to encourage people to be willing to facilitate topics. And there seems to be some hesitation or reluctance to do that.
Well, if we have some standard hot topics, then people don't have to facilitate. They can just come.
No, you have to have a facilitator.
One person to take charge?
Yes, so somebody has to be there to welcome
Just
people
someone
and
can
to
initiate
start
conversation.
initiate the conversation.
Okay.
So I have a background in facilitation, right? And in attending facilitation events, and there's a little bit of a skill to that, right? But if you just say, here's a topic, whoever people show up and talk, there's a real risk that 4 or 5 people show up and nobody talks, and they literally just sit and look at each other, right?
It's not doesn't turn out like birds of a feather sort of thing.
Well, even in Birds of a Feather, when we do Birds of a Feather at DrupalCon, there's always somebody who initiated it, and they show up, and it's their job to welcome people and to start the conversation, right?
Okay, so if that's all that people have to do, then anybody who is interested in it,
exactly.
They could just be the person, the point person for that, and they wouldn't
Sure.
have to commit very much. It's just to welcome people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's been true for the last 2 years, and we're still having trouble getting people to
Maybe
schedule,
people are
to
not
schedule
thinking
topics.
that it's easy enough to do. They're thinking it's a bigger deal.
I agree. And what I'm looking for is ideas on how to better communicate that. Maybe I'm not doing a good job at communicating it. And if people have ideas on how we can communicate that message better so that people are more willing to do it, it would be helpful. But I feel like I've been trying to communicate that, and we're still having difficulty getting people.
Maybe it's the word facilitate, because they think, oh, it's going to be a project to facilitate this thing. But all really they have to do is show up and be a welcomer and start the ball game.
Sure.
So maybe if it's explained as easy to do, because this last one that I did for beginners, before I tried doing, some intro presentation part of it and trying to create something of my own to present, thinking that I needed to be something of a presenter. But this time I didn't have time for that. I had other things that took my time up. So I just showed up and did exactly what you said, was to be a welcomer and a presenter, and let's talk about this. And it was easy. It wasn't that hard, and time passed very easily.
Great. I'm still sharing my screen, ain't I, for no reason. Let's stop that. And actually, we do need to wrap this meeting up because the next meeting's supposed to start in a few minutes.
Okay, well, good ideas. And I've made a list.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think I haven't heard anybody advocating for not sort of keeping our fall backdrop live on the schedule. And I would just encourage people to think about, and let's talk in upcoming meetings about whether or not we think after the fall when we want to maintain 3 times a year, and or if there are ways we can, what we should do. If we should keep that schedule up, if there's ways we can make it less of a burden for people, get more people involved. I'm not sure I can keep maintaining my same level of commitment 3 times a year, but maybe we'll see.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, maybe
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe the autumn one is a good time if, see what people think about going to, say, a spring and autumn kind of pattern, but think about what smaller things we might do at other points in the year. And that could be things more focused, or it could be more specialized niche areas.
Or ways to make it more fun.
Oh, that's always good. Make it more fun. Yep. Okay, I'm going to end the YouTube meeting. Bye, everybody. We'll see some of you in the next meeting.